Good evening. You've arrived at a quiet place meant for rest. There is nothing you need to prepare for, nothing you need to focus on, nothing you need to understand or remember. Tonight is not about learning something new. It's not about following instructions or reaching a conclusion. This is simply a soft science story, spoken slowly and designed to remain in the background as you rest. You don't need to listen closely. You don't need to track where one sentence ends and the next begins. If your attention drifts away from the words, that's completely fine. The voice will continue at a steady pace, whether you are listening or not. Your body already knows how to rest in a familiar environment. Breathing continues without effort. The weight of your body is already supported by the surface beneath you. Nothing needs to change for this to work. This video does not ask you to do anything. It does not ask you to imagine scenes, visualize images, or hold ideas in mind. It is designed to stay predictable and even, without surprises. Everything you hear tonight is based on simple, well-established scientific understanding. Not theories meant to impress, not ideas meant to provoke curiosity. Just observations that describe how perception tends to respond to repeated patterns over time. These ideas will be shared gently, without urgency, without emphasis. They are not arranged to build toward a point. They are not meant to be followed in sequence. If you fall asleep partway through, nothing is missed. The topic tonight is repetition. Not repetition as something to study closely, but repetition as something already familiar. The way sounds fade into the background. The way steady patterns become easier to ignore. The way the mind gradually stops checking for change when nothing new is required. There is no need to think about this. No need to define it. No need to notice when it happens. The words will continue, slow and even. They don't need your attention to remain present. They don't rely on awareness to do what they are doing. If sleep arrives quietly, it can stay. If it takes time, that's fine too. Nothing here depends on an outcome. For now, you can remain exactly as you are. Listening if you want to, not listening if you don't. The rhythm will remain the same. The pace will not change, and the science will continue softly in the background, steady, predictable, and easy to leave unnoticed. As the minutes pass, the body often begins to settle on its own without being asked to do so. There is no need to adjust your position unless your body naturally wants to. If you are already comfortable, stillness can remain exactly as it is. Breathing continues on its own. It does not need to be slowed down or made deeper. Each breath arrives and then leaves, following a rhythm that has been familiar for a long time. The body has been repeating this process without effort long before this moment. The muscles in the face may already be soft, the small muscles around the eyes, the jaw resting without being held in place, the tongue finding a natural position in the mouth. Nothing needs to be released deliberately. Nothing needs to be relaxed on command. The nervous system understands how to respond when there is no demand placed on it, when the environment is quiet, when the pace remains steady, when nothing new is required. The shoulders may feel supported, not pulled downward, just carried evenly by gravity, doing what it always does. Your arms are where they are. They do not need to be positioned correctly. They do not need to feel symmetrical or balanced. They are simply present. The chest rises and falls gently. The movement may be subtle, It may change slightly from moment to moment. Breathing adjusts continuously without asking for permission. Lower in the body, the abdomen responds to each breath in its own way. There's no need to hold it in, no need to guide it outward or inward. It responds naturally, as it always has. The legs are supported by the surface beneath you. The weight of them is already being carried. There is nothing to keep upright, nothing to balance. The feet do not need attention. They do not need warmth or tingling or any particular sensation. They can simply remain at the far end of the body, quiet and unremarkable. As these sensations remain steady, the brain begins to notice the absence of urgency. There is no task waiting, no response required, no signal that something needs to change. This is often when mental activity begins to slow, not because it is being controlled, but because there is nothing pressing to react to. Thoughts may still appear, fragments of the day, loose images, unfinished sentences. They do not need to be pushed away. They do not need to be followed. They can pass through the mind in the same way familiar sounds pass through a quiet room. Present for a moment, then gone. If your attention drifts away from these words, that is expected. The body does not require continuous input. It responds just as well to consistency and tone. The voice you are hearing is not here to guide you somewhere. It is here to remain even, predictable, a steady presence that does not ask for participation. There is nowhere else to be right now. Nothing else to prepare for. The night does not require readiness. You can remain exactly as you are, breathing, supported, unchanged. The body has repeated these patterns many times before, resting, settling, continuing without effort. There is no need to monitor when this happens, no need to notice a transition. The process does not announce itself. It continues quietly, repeating familiar rhythms, doing what it already knows how to do. As the body remains settled, attention often becomes less focused on individual sensations and more open to a general sense of steadiness. There is no clear line between being fully awake and resting deeply. Instead, there is a gradual shift, one that happens quietly, without signaling that anything has changed. In daily life, many sounds repeat without being noticed. A fan moving air through a room, distant traffic, steady and indistinct, the low hum of electrical systems. At first, these sounds may be recognized, but as they continue without variation, the mind stops checking for them. They do not disappear, they simply require less attention. This response does not need to be learned. It happens naturally, without effort. When something remains the same, the brain begins to treat it as safe to ignore. There is no new information arriving, no adjustment required. This is not a decision, it is a tendency. The same pattern can be noticed in other familiar experiences. A steady clock ticking in another room, the feeling of clothing against the skin, the background presence of a familiar space. When these sensations repeat without change, they fade into the background of awareness. They remain present, but they no longer ask to be noticed. This does not mean they are unimportant. It means they are predictable. Predictability reduces effort. When the environment stays the same, the nervous system has less work to do. It does not need to scan for changes. It does not need to prepare a response. Over time, attention naturally softens. This process does not require focus or intention. It does not improve when it is watched closely. It unfolds on its own. Repetition does not add anything new. It removes the need to check. As sounds, sensations, and rhythms repeat, they become easier to leave unattended. They form a stable background that does not compete for awareness. This is why certain environments feel calming without being quiet. Nothing stands out. Nothing asks for interpretation. The voice you are hearing now follows this same pattern. It does not change direction. It does not increase in intensity. It remains steady. Words arrive, then pass. Sentences do not need to connect in a meaningful way. They can simply repeat familiar structures. If your attention rests on them, that is fine. If it drifts away, that is fine too. The experience does not depend on engagement. Familiarity builds through repetition, not through effort. And as familiarity increases, the need to stay alert gradually decreases. There is no moment when this shift needs to be noticed, no signal that marks the change. It happens quietly as repeated patterns continue and awareness becomes less concerned with following them. As awareness remains open and unhurried, it becomes easier to notice that not everything around you is being processed in the same way. Even in a quiet room, there are many signals present at the same time. Subtle sounds, small changes in light, sensations from the body. Most of these signals do not reach conscious attention. This is not because they are absent. It is because perception is selective. The brain does not treat all incoming information equally. It does not respond to everything it receives. Instead, it tends to focus on what changes and let the rest remain in the background. Signals that repeat without variation slowly lose priority. They are still there, but they are no longer treated as important. This filtering happens continuously. It does not wait for instruction. It does not require effort. When a sound repeats in the same way, the brain begins to treat it as familiar. When a sensation remains constant, it becomes easier to overlook. This process helps reduce unnecessary work. If every repeated signal demanded attention, the nervous system would remain constantly alert. But predictability allows attention to soften. Perception adjusts based on patterns. What stays the same becomes quieter. What changes stands out briefly and then fades again if it continues. This does not mean perception shuts down. It becomes more efficient. The environment does not need to be silent for this to happen. It only needs to be steady. When nothing new is introduced, the brain has fewer decisions to make. There is no need to interpret, no need to prepare. This is why familiar places often feel calmer than unfamiliar ones, not because they are better, but because they require less monitoring. Over time, repeated patterns create a sense of stability. Stability reduces demand. The mind does not need to track what it already knows will remain the same. This response is not conscious. It happens below awareness, without comment. As repetition continues, perception gently shifts from active noticing to passive presence. The voice you are hearing follows this same principle. Its tone remains consistent. Its pace does not change. There are no sudden pauses, no emphasis meant to draw attention. The words are not arranged to stand out. They are meant to blend. As sentences repeat similar structures, meaning becomes less important than rhythm. The sound of the voice becomes more noticeable than the content of the words. This is a natural response. When language becomes predictable, it requires less processing. It becomes easier to let it pass without interpretation. This is not something to practice. It is not something to achieve. It happens automatically as repetition continues. Perception is always adjusting, always filtering, always deciding what can be safely ignored. When signals remain unchanged, they slowly move out of focus. They do not disappear. They simply stop asking for attention. There is no moment when this shift needs to be noticed, no clear boundary between listening and not listening. The process continues quietly in the background. As repetition builds, perception becomes less sharp, less defined. And in that softening, the effort to stay alert naturally decreases. The environment remains the same, the rhythm remains steady. Nothing new is required. There is a simple term used in science to describe what happens when repeated signals become easier to ignore. It is called habituation. The word itself is not important. It does not need to be remembered. It simply describes a familiar process. When the same signal is presented again and again without change, the response to it gradually decreases. The signal does not disappear. The environment does not become empty. What changes is the level of attention given to it. This process has been observed across many situations. In sounds that repeat, in sensations that remain constant, in environments that do not demand adjustment. At first, a signal may stand out. It may be noticed clearly. But as it continues without variation, the nervous system begins to respond less. Not because something is wrong, but because nothing new is happening. Habituation is not a loss of sensitivity. It is a shift in priority. Signals that repeat without consequence become less important to track. This allows attention to be available for change, if change occurs. When there is no change, there is no need to remain alert. This response happens without conscious control. It does not require effort or decision. The brain does not announce when it happens. It does not mark a moment of transition. The response simply becomes quieter. A familiar scent in a room may be noticed at first. After a short time, it fades from awareness. The scent remains present. The air does not change. What changes is the response. The same can be true for steady sounds, a low hum, a distant noise. As long as the sound remains the same, it gradually requires less attention. This is habituation. It is a basic feature of how perception works. Without it, the nervous system would remain occupied by signals that do not matter. With it, attention can soften when the environment is predictable. Habituation does not turn perception off. It refines it. It allows repeated signals to move into the background, where they no longer need to be monitored. This is not something that needs to be encouraged. It does not need to be practiced. It happens naturally as repetition continues. The voice you are hearing now is repeating patterns in tone and structure. It does not vary in intensity. It does not introduce sudden changes. As these patterns repeat, the response to them may become quieter. Words may still be heard, but they do not need to be processed. Sentences may blur together. Pauses may feel longer. Meaning does not need to be followed closely. This is not a problem. It is a sign that repetition is doing what it tends to do. The environment remains unchanged. The rhythm remains even. Nothing requires interpretation. As habituation continues, awareness may begin to loosen its grip on specific details. The edges of perception soften. There is no need to notice this shift, no need to label it. It happens in its own time. Signals that remain constant no longer need attention to remain present. They simply continue. And as they continue, the effort to monitor them fades. This is how repeated patterns gradually become part of the background, not through force, not through control, but through familiarity. Repetition is not limited to perception or attention. It appears quietly throughout the natural world. Many processes around us unfold through steady patterns that repeat without announcement. Waves reach the shore again and again. Not in exactly the same way, but with a familiar rhythm. The movement continues whether or not it is being observed. Day follows night. Light changes gradually. There is no moment when one clearly ends and the other begins. These cycles do not require attention in order to continue. They do not respond to being noticed. They remain steady on their own. Because of this, they rarely demand focus. When something repeats over long periods of time, it becomes part of the background of experience. It is known without needing to be checked. The body responds to this kind of consistency with less effort. In environments shaped by repetition, there is little need for constant evaluation. Nothing new is expected. Nothing urgent is arriving. This allows awareness to relax. Natural systems often move at a pace that does not hurry toward an outcome. They repeat, adjust slightly, and repeat again. The repetition itself is what creates stability. When patterns are predictable, they do not require monitoring. They continue without interruption. This is true whether the changes are large or small, whether they unfold over minutes or over much longer periods. The important feature is not speed, it is consistency. Repetition does not draw attention to itself. It quietly removes the need for attention. This is one reason familiar natural environments often feel calming, not because they are empty, but because they are steady. The sound of wind through trees, the movement of water, the gradual shift of light across a room. These patterns repeat without signaling that they are doing so. They are not trying to communicate information. They are simply continuing. The nervous system responds by doing the same. When there is nothing to interpret, attention softens. When nothing changes suddenly, alertness becomes unnecessary. The mind does not need to stay prepared. This response does not depend on understanding the process. It does not require naming what is happening. It emerges naturally, through exposure to repetition. As patterns remain familiar, the effort to track them fades. They are still present, still unfolding, but they no longer ask to be followed. The same principle applies here. The words continue at an even pace. The tone remains unchanged. There is no increase in complexity, no new direction being introduced. As repetition continues, perception treats this environment as stable. There is no need to check for change, no need to remain alert. Awareness can remain open without effort. This is not a state that needs to be reached. It is not something to aim for. It develops on its own, as repeated patterns continue without variation. In the natural world, repetition does not signal progress or completion. It simply maintains continuity. There is no end point implied, no resolution waiting. The process continues because it is already in motion. And as these steady patterns persist, attention is free to loosen its focus. Nothing here requires interpretation. Nothing requires response. The rhythm remains the same. Repetition continues quietly, doing what it has always done, without needing to be noticed. By now, there is no need to keep track of what has already been said. Nothing here depends on remembering details. Nothing is building toward a conclusion. The patterns being described continue whether or not they are followed. Repetition remains. Familiarity remains. The steady rhythm does not change. From this point on, there is no new information to introduce, no new ideas to hold in mind. Everything that follows will stay within what has already been mentioned. The same themes, the same pace. This is intentional. When information stops changing, the brain no longer needs to stay alert. There is nothing new to evaluate, nothing unexpected to respond to. Words may still be heard, but they no longer need to be interpreted. They can pass through awareness without forming clear meaning. The body remains supported. Breathing continues on its own. The environment is unchanged. There is no signal suggesting that attention should sharpen. No indication that something important is about to happen. The repetition is gentle. It does not insist on being noticed. This is a point of permission. Permission to stop listening closely. Permission to let sentences blur together. Permission to allow the voice to become part of the background. If sleep arrives now, nothing is missed. The processes being described do not move toward an ending. They repeat. They continue. If awareness fades, it fades naturally. If it returns briefly later, it can drift again just as easily. There is no correct way to experience this moment. Some nights, rest arrives quickly. Other nights, it arrives in stages. Both are normal. The body does not need instruction. The mind does not need reassurance. The steady rhythm is enough. The voice remains even. The tone does not change. From here on, the information density stays low. Meaning will continue to soften. There is no advantage in staying awake for what comes next. Nothing important is about to be said. The words will continue, not to convey ideas, but to maintain familiarity. And in that familiarity, there is room to let go, to drift without effort, to remain without focus. The repetition will continue quietly in the background, steady and unchanged, whether it is being noticed or not. As repetition continues, the experience of time often begins to change in subtle ways. Moments do not need to be counted. There is no clear sense of sequence to follow. When patterns remain the same, time no longer needs to be measured. There is no reference point that marks progress. Minutes do not stand apart from one another. They blend. This is a familiar experience. When nothing changes, time feels less structured. It becomes softer around the edges. The mind does not need to keep track of how long something has been happening. There is no benefit in doing so. Repetition removes landmarks. Without landmarks, time loses its shape. This does not mean time stops. It continues as it always has. What changes is the way it is noticed. When events repeat without variation, the sense of before and after becomes less clear. There is only continuity. This is why familiar routines often feel shorter than unfamiliar ones. Not because they take less time, but because they require less attention. Attention and time are closely linked. When attention relaxes, time becomes less defined. There is no need to follow the passage of moments, no need to notice when one phrase ends and another begins. The voice continues at the same pace. The rhythm does not shift. Without changes to respond to, awareness has less reason to remain sharp. Time becomes something that passes quietly, without being tracked. This is not a state that needs to be noticed. It does not arrive all at once. It develops gradually as repetition continues. When everything sounds similar, there is nothing to signal progression, no indication that something new has arrived. The mind no longer needs to anticipate what comes next. In this state, the present moment does not feel distinct from the one before it, or the one that follows. They flow together. This can feel like drifting, not moving forward, not moving backward, just remaining. The words you hear now are part of this pattern. They do not point toward an outcome. They are not arranged to lead anywhere. They simply continue. If awareness drifts away from them, time continues without interruption. If it returns briefly, it finds the same rhythm waiting. Nothing has changed. There is no urgency in this flow, no pace to keep up with. Time does not ask to be followed. It moves quietly in the background, as it always does, without needing to be noticed. Language itself responds to repetition. When the same words return again and again, their meaning begins to soften. They are still understood, but they no longer ask to be examined. Phrases that sound familiar require less effort to hear. The brain does not need to unpack them each time they appear. This is why repeated expressions often fade into rhythm. The sound remains, the structure remains. Meaning becomes less important. As sentences begin in similar ways, attention no longer needs to prepare for difference. The shape of the language is already known. This predictability reduces demand. Words arrive, they pass. They are replaced by words that feel much the same. The mind does not need to follow the content closely. It can rest in the pattern instead. Language becomes less about information and more about continuity. When phrases repeat, they create a steady surface. There is nothing to search for beneath it. The voice continues. The pace remains unchanged. There is no emphasis placed on any particular sentence. No word is meant to stand out. This allows listening to become passive. You may still hear the words clearly, but they do not need to be connected. Sentences can overlap, ideas can dissolve into one another. This is a natural response. As language repeats, it becomes easier to let it move through awareness without resistance. There is no need to hold on to meaning. The sound of the voice carries the rhythm. The words simply follow. This is how familiar language often functions in the background of daily life. Common phrases, routine expressions, they are understood without attention. Here, the same process continues. The structure of the sentences remains similar. The tone does not change. Repetition creates a sense of stability. Stability allows attention to loosen. There is nothing hidden in the language, nothing waiting to be discovered. It is safe to let the words pass without engagement. If meaning fades, that is expected. If only the sound remains, that is enough. Language does not need to be followed to continue. It does not depend on awareness. It moves forward quietly, repeating familiar forms, maintaining the same gentle rhythm. And as it does, the effort to listen closely becomes unnecessary. The pattern holds on its own. As repetition continues, patterns no longer feel like sequences. They feel continuous. There is no clear beginning to notice, no clear point where one part ends and another begins. The same elements return, arranged in familiar ways, not to build meaning, just to maintain rhythm. Long patterns do not move toward completion. They do not resolve. They simply persist. This kind of continuity does not ask for attention. It does not reward focus. It remains steady, whether it is followed or not. When patterns stretch out evenly, the mind no longer expects change. There is no anticipation. Without anticipation, alertness becomes unnecessary. The voice remains the same. The pacing does not shift. There is nothing to signal progress, nothing to suggest that something important is approaching. This is intentional. Long, even patterns reduce the need to track time. They remove landmarks. Without landmarks, attention has no place to anchor. Awareness becomes less directed, less precise. The words you hear now resemble the words you heard moments ago. They are arranged similarly. They carry the same tone. There is no need to compare them, no need to remember what came before. Each phrase stands alone and yet blends into the next. This repetition is not meant to teach. It is not meant to clarify. It is meant to remain. When nothing changes, the mind can stop preparing for change. Patterns that continue without variation become part of the background. They no longer ask to be noticed. This is how long, steady environments often feel. Not empty, just unchanging. The repetition itself becomes familiar enough to ignore. There is no instruction to follow here, no direction being given. The voice does not lead anywhere. It simply stays. If attention rests on it, that is fine. If it drifts away, that is also fine. The pattern does not depend on awareness. It continues whether or not it is being heard clearly. Nothing new is introduced. Nothing needs to be processed. The same rhythm remains in place. Long patterns do not ask to be completed. They do not point toward an ending. They exist without urgency. And as they continue, attention no longer needs to hold on. It can soften further, letting the pattern remain on its own, steady and unchanged. The rhythm continues without change. There is nothing new being added, nothing being explained. The words are still present, but they no longer need to carry meaning. They can remain as sound, moving at a steady pace without forming clear ideas. There is nothing left to follow. The environment stays quiet and unchanged. The tone does not shift. The pace remains the same. Breathing continues on its own. The body remains supported without effort. There is no need to notice where one sentence ends and another begins. They may blur together. Pauses may feel longer. Time may feel less distinct. This is not something to focus on. It can happen without awareness. The body does not need instruction now. It already knows how to remain still. It already knows how to rest. The voice continues in the background without urgency. It does not change direction. It does not signal anything new. If sleep arrives, it can arrive quietly. If it does not, there is no problem. Nothing here depends on an outcome. The mind does not need to hold on to anything that has been said. There is nothing to remember, nothing to complete. As the moments pass, the pattern remains gentle and predictable. There will be no sudden changes, no shifts in tone or pace. The words no longer point to meaning, they only maintain rhythm. That rhythm does not need to be understood. It can exist quietly in the background, like familiar motion, like steady patterns that continue without notice. Nothing more is required. The repetition continues, the quiet remains, the rhythm remains. Nothing shifts, nothing resolves. The same steady patterns stay in place. The voice continues, not asking to be followed, not pointing anywhere. Words arrive, then soften, then pass. They do not need to be completed. The space between them is enough. Breathing continues without being noticed. The body stays supported. There is nothing to hold. If awareness has already faded, the sound continues without needing to be heard. If awareness returns briefly, it finds the same rhythm waiting. Nothing has changed. There is no signal marking the passage of time, no clear boundary between moments. The patterns do not move forward. They do not move back. They remain. The repetition stays gentle. The tone stays even. There is no reason to stay alert. The words no longer carry information. They only carry rhythm. That rhythm does not need attention. It can exist quietly in the background, like distant motion, like slow cycles that do not announce themselves. Nothing more is required. The night continues, the sound continues, and the quiet remains.